Some children are called mature for their age. They're calm, responsible, emotionally composed. Adults admire them. Teachers praise them. Family members rely on them. They seem easy to raise. They don't cause problems. They don't demand attention. But sometimes, mature is just a polite word for something else. Sometimes it means a child had to grow up too early. True emotional maturity develops slowly. Through play, through mistakes, through environments where emotions are safe to express. Children are supposed to explore. To be loud, cry, to ask for things, to depend on others. But some children skip that stage. They don't become mature gradually, they become adaptable quickly. Instead of focusing on their own experiences, they begin paying attention to something else, the emotional atmosphere around them. They start noticing tension, arguments, stress, disappointment. Their attention shifts away from being a child and toward managing the environment around them. Psychologists sometimes call this parentification. It happens when a child begins fulfilling emotional roles that normally belong to adults. The child becomes the listener, the comforter, the mediator, sometimes even the problem solver. They learn to regulate their own emotions very early. But more importantly, they begin regulating everyone else's. They become sensitive to moods, careful with their words, attentive to emotional shifts in the room, and often the adults around them praise this behavior. You're so mature. You're the responsible one. You're so easy to deal with. But beneath that praise is a quiet truth. They didn't simply become mature. They became necessary. Not every child who grows up this way realizes it. Because from the outside, it often looks like good behavior. They don't complain much. They don't ask for a lot. They try to make things easier for the adults around them. Maybe they listen to conversations that are too heavy for their age. Maybe they calm arguments between family members. Maybe they stay quiet when tension fills the room. They become observant. They learn to read moods quickly. And they adjust themselves to keep things stable. People often see this and say, "That child is so mature." But sometimes that maturity is actually hyper-awareness. The kind children develop when they feel responsible for keeping things from falling apart. Many children labeled mature are not expressing fewer emotions because they're stable. They're expressing fewer emotions because it feels unsafe to do otherwise. Crying may create more tension. Anger may escalate conflict. Asking for help may be ignored. So the child learns something powerful. Control your emotions. Contain your reactions. Don't create more problems. Over time, emotional suppression begins to look like emotional maturity. The child appears calm, collected, independent. But inside they are simply containing themselves. Children who grow up this way often develop something like an emotional radar. They notice small changes in tone, facial expression, a shift in someone's voice. Before anyone says anything, they already sense something is wrong. This ability can look impressive. And in many ways it is. But it comes with a cost. Because instead of focusing on their own feelings, they become experts at tracking everyone else's. Their attention moves outward. Always scanning, always adjusting, always preparing. And slowly they lose the habit of asking a simple question. What am I feeling right now? Childhood has psychological purposes. It's the stage where people learn. How to express emotions safely. How to depend on others. How to ask for help without fear. How to make mistakes without feeling responsible for everything. But when childhood becomes emotional responsibility training, those developmental stages often get skipped. The child becomes capable, but not necessarily supported. They become composed, but not necessarily understood. And the role they learned early continues shaping them later in life. When children grow up managing emotional environments, they often carry that role into adulthood. Without realizing it, they become the stabilizer in relationships. The one who listens more than they speak. The one who helps others process their problems. The one who absorbs tension. People often feel safe around them, because they feel understood. But the dynamic slowly becomes one-sided. They provide emotional support easily. Receiving support feels unfamiliar, sometimes even uncomfortable. Not because they don't want it, but because they never learned how to depend on someone without feeling like a burden. Adults who were mature too early often develop similar patterns. They struggle to ask for help. They feel responsible for other people's emotions. They remain calm during stressful situations. But internally they feel exhausted. They know how to support others, but they don't always know how to receive support themselves. The identity they built to survive childhood slowly becomes the personality they carry into adulthood. Over time, this role becomes part of who they believe they are. The responsible one, the strong one, the dependable one. And letting go of that identity can feel unsettling, because a difficult question appears. If I'm not the one holding everything together, who am I? For many people, their sense of value became tied to how useful they were to others. So even when the role becomes exhausting, they keep playing it, not because they want to, but because it's familiar, and familiarity often feels safer than change. Many people believe their personality is simply who they are: independent, controlled, emotionally strong. But sometimes personality is simply adaptation that lasted too long. Calmness, the composure, the self-reliance. These traits may have developed for a reason. Understanding that reason can change how someone relates to themselves. Questions like this rarely have simple answers. When did responsibility replace childhood? When did emotional control become automatic? What part of yourself learned to disappear to keep the environment stable? These patterns often exist below awareness. Exploring them requires honesty, reflection, and sometimes confronting parts of yourself you've never fully examined. That process is often called shadow work. Being mature too early may have helped you survive your environment, but survival roles are not always meant to last forever. Sometimes understanding the role you played as a child is the first step toward understanding who you actually are.